saw that main event on Fox this weekend. If not, you missed a classic and certainly the front runner, at least early on here in 2018 for Fight of the Year. But Chuck Mindenhall, sort of the thesis of his column really is like when you take the pledge to fight Justin Gaethje, when you sign on the dotted line to fight this lunatic, right? You know what you're getting into. And Dustin Poirier knew what he was getting into. Ultimately, he was the better man Saturday night. And this really is the type of performance for Poirier that, for me, legends are made of. He has not fought for a UFC championship. He has not realized a UFC title. But in 20 UFC fights, what Dustin Poirier has done in terms of the finishes, the strength of schedule, this is a signature win that really bolsters his legacy for me. And I was just thankful to have that seat, man. I felt like I should have paid to be in the building Saturday night.
Without a doubt. First of all, Dustin Poirier is a guy who has sacrificed a lot just to get into the UFC. I've followed his career. I've cut weight with the kid. It's amazing to see his evolution as a fighter. And I think in this performance against Justin Gaethje, we need to also give credit to the Eddie Alvarez fight, to the Anthony Pettis fight, and the previous fights before that, because I think Dustin Poirier was learning a lot about his fighting spirit and what he's capable of. And over the course of those performances, I think he started to gain a tremendous amount of confidence in himself and what he's capable of. So I think heading into this Gaethje fight, him being the more technical fighter, and as you very intelligently mentioned, he knew what he was in for against Gaethje. He knew he was going to have to suffer minute after minute. And again, what was that, like 18 minutes of suffering or so, maybe a little bit less. Anytime you're in there, you have to understand that real fact that when you face a guy like a Justin Gaethje, you're going to have to walk through hell. And you could see that he was comfortable with that. He was the more active fighter. He was landing the cleaner shots, in my opinion. Man, as you said, he's turning into one of those must-see fighters.
I think he is, and Justin Gaethje already was that guy. And I know MMA Junkies John Morgan suggested you were going to need a category just for the non-Justin Gaethje fight of the year, because every time if this guy fights a couple times a year, you're almost guaranteed a fight of the year. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. Yeah. And we could spend this entire opening segment, and probably will, on this fight and what it means for the landscape of this lightweight division. But I'm glad you talked about Dustin Poirier, the fighter, because he had to lean on that spirit a little bit. But let's talk about the fighter here and the evolution. I mean, this is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt who is an outstanding striker. I mean, he landed something like 170, Kenny, of 270 significant strike attempts. He's very accurate, and we're going to talk to Dean Thomas, one of the American top team coaches, later, and he's going to tell you, Kenny, the accuracy, the ability for Dustin to keep his chin tucked and to keep his eyes lasered on the target. He stares exactly where he's going to hit and then hits you there. And it was incredible to sit octagon side and watch Justin Gaethje absorb all this head trauma upstairs and walk through those shots. Finally, early fourth round, he could take no more. And for Dustin Poirier, Kenny, at the end of the second round, wasn't a great visual on the stool, obviously. You know, I think some people thought maybe at that point he was a broken fighter if you didn't know the guy and understand what he was made of. But he had to dig real deep in that third round, and then obviously gets him out of there in the fourth. But just a tremendous fight. And really, I think for an MMA fan, it didn't have a lot of grappling, obviously, but it had everything you could possibly be looking for and everything that drew a lot of us into this sport to begin with.
To me, this indicated that Dustin Poirier was trained very well for this fight. It looked like he knew that he was going to have to fight for the majority of this fight going backwards and in the pocket. And you could tell he was prepared because it was the jab, for me, that was the big indicator. He was able to keep Gaethje on the outside repeatedly, and I think that's what threw Gaethje off. And it didn't allow him to come forward like he wanted to. Gaethje, as tough as he is and as hard as he hits, in regards to his boxing, when he gets in the pocket and he starts to grab that collar tie and he reverts to his dirty boxing, he's extremely effective, and he will knock anyone, or can knock anyone or everyone out from that position. He's brutal there. But when he's just on the outside of that, when he's not totally in the pocket, I'm not sure he's really looking at his target. He's just trying to knock something off your shoulders. You know what I mean? Right. He's just kind of swinging, whereas Dustin Poirier was very specifically looking for that jab. He was looking for targets. He was keeping Gaethje on the outside. He was looking for combinations and not just one-shot knockouts. He was moving a little bit better. At times got caught just moving straight back, but laterally he was moving very well. Now, Gaethje was cutting off the cage and stopping that lateral movement with his leg kicks that were absolutely brutal. And as many as Gaethje threw, I thought he should have thrown even more, especially to the outside. He was hitting the inside, and of course, we know that they are opposite stance fighters. However, I thought Gaethje should have gone to the outside of the leg a little bit more as well.
Yeah. And if you look at the damage Jim Miller did 3 fights ago against Dustin Poirier to the lower part of that leg, that was a lot harder for Dustin Poirier to walk on and put pressure on. And even if you saw Dustin Poirier on Instagram, I believe today, putting the pictures out there of his leg, but doesn't look as bad as a lot of legs we've seen, Kenny. You know what I mean? It really... He seemed to, you're right, not necessarily attack both sides of it, and there was a time in the middle of that fight that he stopped going to it a little bit. Yeah, no, without a doubt. And Gaethje is a brutal leg kicker. He's very well known for that as well. And wasn't able to get that dirty boxing going as much as he liked because of that jab at Dustin Poirier. I thought that he really did his homework. He did a good job. And again, it was an action-packed fight. Gaethje is going to make you fight. The pressure that he puts on you is just phenomenal, and Dustin Poirier seemed to have an answer every single time out. So we had our fighter meeting Thursday, and Daniel Cormier said to Gaethje, your style is not one that lends itself to longevity, and obviously that's a narrative that Justin Gaethje has heard for quite some time. This is his style, and it's not as though he set out to be this type of fighter necessarily, Kenny, but he is so fearful of wrestling fatigue and what offensive wrestling is going to do to his gas tank. These are his words, not mine, that it has created this type of fighter. And he wrestled in the state championship 4 times in that arena in Glendale, Arizona, lost as a freshman and sophomore, won state championships as a junior and senior. His best wrestling days were at 157 pounds. Kenny, he could easily make featherweight, right? Much easier cut to 145 pounds for someone like Gaethje than someone like Dustin Poirier, who still to this day is on the all-time wins list at 145 pounds before he moved back up. Justin Gaethje doesn't cut a lot of weight. He's afraid that his cardio is going to abandon him. Certainly it didn't this night, right? I mean, the conditioning was there for both guys. They absorbed a lot of damage on both sides. I don't know that even if you saw some guys breathing deeply, you could chalk that up to a lack of work in the gym. And even as Justin said, he did everything, running, biking, swimming. He did everything he could to win this fight. I think he just ran into the better man, you know? He ran into a more technical fighter, absolutely. I think Dustin was the more technical fighter. He was landing a good combination from the outside. He was just a little bit more accurate. That left hand that he threw was set up by a jab. He kind of slipped off at an angle. Gaethje did not see that left hand coming. It seemed like he ran into a wall. It was the left hand of Dustin Poirier. That stumbled him. And then Dustin very calmly and being as composed as he was, finished him off. And I thought Herb Dean did a good job of stopping that fight. And there were eye pokes in a lot of different directions we could go within the fight. But as far as Poirier is concerned, Kenny, for the sake of time, 20th fight in the UFC. He said afterwards to me in the octagon, I've been knocked out, climbed back over and over again, 2 weight classes, Dana, Sean, Khabib, let's fucking go. It's time. And as I tweeted this morning, Kenny, I think the calendar and the circumstances right now could align for Dustin Poirier at 155 pounds. It seems like Khabib Nurmagomedov's calendar is November. I'm not sure Tony Ferguson, given his recent knee surgery, would be ready in time. We don't know exactly what's going to go on with Conor McGregor, but if there's no suspension for his antics in New York, prevailing wisdom is that he would be ready and willing by November, even though maybe Conor would want to fight sooner. There is this cloud, and maybe cloud's definitely the wrong word, but this rematch between Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier. This is a rematch that Poirier called for several times in the past. If you recall, Poirier wanted to coach on The Ultimate Fighter opposite Eddie Alvarez. That opportunity went to Justin Gaethje, who has now been knocked out by both of these guys, Alvarez and Poirier. I understand there's unfinished business there, but I understand why for Dustin Poirier that wouldn't be a priority now. He wanted that before main eventing and beating Anthony Pettis and Justin Gaethje back-to-back. I think you strike while the iron's hot. He has never had a championship opportunity. Eddie has been the champion. He has defended the title, albeit losing it in that first defense. To me, Poirier is fresh blood. I can understand why Dana White would be interested. And even though Khabib presents the toughest matchup for him in this division, I wouldn't be surprised to see Poirier actually get a title shot. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and he's cruised past Eddie Alvarez at this point because it was Eddie that didn't want to fight Poirier, and Eddie has been calling for a title shot. And, you know, in my opinion, I think Dustin Poirier is the guy who deserves it above him. And at 155, my buddy Kenneth was like, hey, what are they going to do, man? Now that Dustin won, who's going to fight for the belt? I said, I have no idea. Because we have Tony Ferguson, obviously, who deserves that shot. Is the UFC going to make this? Is going to try to make this fight for the fifth time? Are they going to try to sell to the fans that, oh no, guys, it's the fifth time. This time we're serious. Nothing's going to happen. We swear. We're going to have them train in a big bounce. We're going to keep them nice and safe, and they'll be. It's tough. It's a tough sell, man.
I hear you.
So, okay, Khabib, and what's Conor going to do? Conor wants to fight Mayweather, and Mayweather wants to fight in the octagon with no shoes, and basically he wants a boxing fight in the octagon. Dude, get out of here. It's not happening. You're fighting an MMA fight or not. Otherwise, Conor would have kicked you in the face in a boxing match. Yeah, I'll fight you in a boxing match, except no shoes. We can knee, elbow, and kick. How's that?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Man. Absurd, right? So that is, and of course the wild card in all of this is Nate Diaz because he moves the needle, and even though most would argue, at least on paper, not as deserving of a title fight as Dustin Poirier or Eddie Alvarez, or certainly the former UFC interim lightweight champion Tony Ferguson. But it's not to say that Eddie Alvarez on paper isn't worthy of a championship opportunity right now. I just believe promotionally, and this is just speculation, it's not even informed speculation, but that they viewed the Poirier-Alvarez fight more as a win for Dustin given the way it ended. And if they tried to make that rematch, I don't know. I think that was more about giving Gaethje a high-profile opportunity to coach on The Ultimate Fighter. But given what Poirier has done since, I think he's hard to deny if Tony and Conor are not available. So I don't know. The other people in the mix are Edson Barboza and Kevin Lee, and they fight this weekend in Atlantic City. So either way, Dustin Poirier has put himself in a good spot. And
I agree.
As he said to us, Kenny, on this show 3 or 4 weeks ago, the toughest fight for him at 155 pounds is Khabib Nurmagomedov. So I guess if you're Team Poirier, unfortunately, when your guy seems to be rising to the top of this division or close to it, the guy who's the champion is this suffocating wrestler-grappler that provides the toughest matchup for you. But I think he's worthy, you know?
I agree, and I think this was a great result for him. Again, not only as a guy that the UFC can rely on, that's going to show up and fight his ass off, but just based on what he's done, look who he's beaten. Equation. Look at his consistency as far as, you know, the excitement that he brings and the wins that he's been bringing into the equation. I think right now he's kind of rise to the top. We don't know what's going to happen with Conor. Tony's out for a while. I don't think they're going to try to make that fight not this close anyway, not on this kind of turnaround. So he's put himself in an excellent position.
Octagon News.